Hey everyone, tonight we'll delve into the darkest, most unsettling chapter of ancient Roman history, one you've likely never heard of. You stand now in the heart of the Roman Forum, not under the midday sun, but under a moonless sky, where the cold marble whispers secrets older than the Republic itself. The air is thick with the scent of wet earth and forgotten things, and as you walk, the ground beneath your feet feels strangely hollow. You probably won't want to believe what you are about to hear, but these aren't just myths. They are the echoes of a hidden truth that Rome, in all its grandeur, desperately tried to bury. The gods, Jupiter, Mars, Venus are but a gilded facade. Beneath their gleaming temples lies a pantheon of forgotten deities, banished to the shadows, whose very names were deemed too dangerous to speak. So, before the tension gets too high, take a moment to like the episode and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, if you're listening, share your location and the time in the comments. I'd love to know where you are as we embark on this journey. Now close your eyes, imagine the ancient mountains, and let's unravel this epic tale together. The first whisper of oblivion begins not on a sun-drenched hill, but in the suffocating darkness of Rome's catacombs. We're not talking about the well-traveled tunnels filled with Christian martyrs. We're talking about a deeper, older network of passages, carved by a people long before Romulus and Remus. These are the tunnels of the forgotten god, Tenebris, whose name means darkness itself. Tenebris wasn't a god of death like Pluto or a god of the underworld. He was the god of what is no longer, of the void that exists where something once was. He was the deity of fading memories and the great final erasure. Imagine you are a lamb-bearer, following a disgraced Vestal virgin named Lyra, who has been sent on a strange mission by the Senata, punishment for a minor transgression. Her task? To find a legendary unmapped section of the catacombs, said to contain a spring that flows with pure, eternal water. But Lyra, like all of Rome's scholars, knows this is a lie. The spring's true nature is a bizarre, historical footnote, a local legend whispered only by the oldest families of the Aventine Hill. It's not water, but a chilling liquid called amnesia, rumored to cause total, irreversible memory loss with just a single drop. This wasn't just a physical danger. It was a psychological one. Roman culture was built on the strength of ancestry and the collective memory of its heroes and deeds. To forget one's past was to cease to exist in a very real, spiritual sense. As Lyra's lamp casts long, dancing shadows, you see crude, almost prehistoric symbols carved into the obsidian rock. They aren't the familiar Roman numerals or letters. They are jagged, intersecting lines that seem to vibrate with a silent hum. A subtle observation on the nature of these gods: they do not speak in words, but in a primordial language of raw sensation and feeling. A strange detail emerges as you go deeper. The air is filled not with the stale scent of tombs, but with the cloying sweetness of rot, like fruit left in the sun too long. This is the offering to Tenebris, a grotesque ritual from an archaic cult. You can almost feel the presence of something vast and empty. The myth tells of a peculiar artifact, the eroding compass, which was a tool of Tenebris. Unlike a normal compass that points north, this one points only two places that are fading from memory. As Lyra holds it, the needle spins wildly, then settles, pointing toward a wall that looks no different from any other. But you remember the legend. The compass only works for those who have already forgotten something crucial. What has Lyra already lost? She presses her hand against the cold stone, and it dissolves into a swirling liquid darkness, revealing a passage that seems to inhale the light from her lamp. The question that remained was, what kind of deity requires a world to be forgotten to maintain its own power? As Lyra steps into the void, you follow, knowing that to forget the gods of the known world is to remember the lost ones. As you step through the dissolved stone with Lyra, the air doesn't get colder, it gets heavier, thick with an almost palpable silence. The echoes from the underworld here are not screams or wails, but a profound stillness that seems to press in on your senses. Roman superstition, as you know from countless scrolls and tablets, was rife with beliefs about malevolent spiritual forces. Not just ghosts, but the larvae, spirits of those who died with no one to remember them, condemned to wander the earth, and the Lemures. Phantom beings that haunted homes, causing madness and terror. But these catacombs hold something far more ancient, something that predates even those fears. They are a physical manifestation of a psychological dread. You and Lyra move forward, the liquid darkness solidifying behind you. Your lamplight reveals the walls of the new passage are not carved rock but compressed, petrified ash. This is the truth behind a bizarre Roman belief, the tradition of scattering the ashes of the forgotten not just into rivers, but into a secret subterranean network to be absorbed by the earth itself. It was thought to prevent their spirits from ever finding peace, or more terrifyingly, from ever returning. This was Rome's attempt to control a problem they couldn't name. The passage twists and turns, a true labyrinth. But the eroding compass in Lyra's hand now pulses with a soft blue light pointing ever onward. It's a disconcerting quirk of this artifact. The stronger the forgotten memory, the brighter it glows. This suggests that what you are about to encounter is tied to something vast and profoundly lost. As you walk, a faint rhythmic sound begins to emerge from the deep. It's not a beating drum or footsteps, but a sound like countless grains of sand sifting and falling. The sound grows louder, filling your ears with its unsettling, continuous motion. It's the oral signature of something ancient, something patiently waiting. Lyra, her face a mask of determination, whispers, "This is not the underworld of Pluto. This is the realm of those who were never meant to be, of the non-existent." Her words hang in the heavy air, a haunting reminder that there are depths of reality far beyond the heroic myths of the Olympian gods. She remembers an obscure, almost erased historical fact. Roman engineers, when planning new roads or buildings, would often find strange, impossible, to fill sinkholes that would appear overnight. The official explanation was unstable ground. The whisper spoke of Tenebris claiming his own, pulling forgotten places back into his shadowy domain. Suddenly, you see it. The tunnel opens into a vast, cavernous chamber, and the sound of falling sand is deafening. But it's not sand, it's an illusion. The walls are covered in what looks like countless grains of sand, but as you look closer, you realize they are miniature, petrified memories. Small scenes: a child's lost toy, a soldier's forgotten victory, a lover's whispered promise, each one a fleeting, captured image. They drift, and as they fall, they crumble into dust. This bizarre psychological landscape is the domain of Tenebris, where memories themselves are the raw material for his existence. One memory catches your eye before it dissolves, a fleeting image of a vast obsidian gate guarded by a cyclopean figure. But the question that remained was, what kind of gate needs to be hidden beneath the city? And what entity could be so terrifying that it warranted its very existence to be erased from the historical record? As you stare at the fading image, you feel a deep, unsettling calm, as if your own memories are beginning to settle, to prepare for a quiet, final rest. You stand now in the vast chamber of forgotten memories. The silence, a heavy blanket over the faint, sifting sound of crumbling moments. The image of the Cyclopean guardian from the petrified memory is still seared into your mind. Lyra, her hand still holding the now-flickering, eroding compass, moves toward the far end of the chamber, where the sand-like memories coalesce into a single, swirling vortex. It's here that the myth of the forgotten Pantheon's gatekeeper, a bizarre cyclopean deity named Custos, begins to take a terrifying, visceral form. Custos isn't a god of sight. The single eye that dominates his face is not for seeing the world, but for seeing what is not there. He is the deity of omission, of the spaces between things, and his eye perceives only the forgotten. The Romans, in their pragmatic way, had a superstition about single-eyed figures and objects. They were considered portents of half-truths and incomplete narratives. The famous story of the Cyclops Polyphemus in Greek mythology, while entertaining, was also a cautionary tale about the danger of a perspective limited to a single point of view. Custos, however, is a much older, darker concept. As you and Lyra approach the vortex, the ground beneath your feet becomes less like petrified ash and more like polished obsidian, so dark it seems to drink the light. The swirling memories begin to part, revealing a colossal, grotesque figure carved from the very rock of the catacombs. He is a monolith of uncarved stone, with a single, massive eye socket that is completely empty. The eye itself is not missing, but has been physically removed and replaced with a swirling nebula of fragmented, unrecognizable colors. This is the eye of unmaking, the quirky, bizarre detail of this deity. It doesn't see, it unsees. It has the power to look upon a person or a place and erase it from existence, not by destruction, but by simply making it so that it was never there. A chilling psychological twist to the nature of divine power. Lyra stops, her face pale. She remembers a forgotten historical fact, a detail from a set of obscure religious rites used during the Roman Republic. Before any major construction project, priests would perform a ceremony called the defixio, a ritual curse to bind and forget any prior spirits or entities that might inhabit the land. This was an act of magical erasure, meant to blind the eyes of whatever spirits were there. But perhaps Lyra thinks it was meant to blind the cyclopean eye of Custos himself, to prevent him from unseeing the new foundation and plunging the entire structure into a state of non-existence. The silence is broken by a faint clicking sound, like a dry bone against stone. Custos, the enormous eyeless statue, begins to move, his immense form grinding against the cavern floor. His single, swirling eye socket turns toward you, and you feel a wave of vertigo, a profound disorientation. It's not fear, but a sense of your own history becoming unmoored, as if the memories of your life are becoming loose, like pages in a book with a broken spine. You feel a subtle psychological attack, a direct assault on the self. This deity is not interested in your life, but in the truth of your life, the people who have come and gone, the moments that defined you. Lyra raises the eroding compass, and its blue light intensifies, its pulse a desperate heartbeat. The compass, designed to point to lost things, is now a shield against the god of unmaking. It's a subtle observation on the nature of these divine forces. They are not all powerful in the ways you might imagine. They have rules, weaknesses, and a deep intrinsic connection to the concepts they embody. For Custos, his power is absolute only over that which is forgotten. A compass, which is a physical manifestation of memory and what is lost, is his bane. The cavern floor rumbles as Custos lumbers forward. Lyra takes a deep breath and points the compass at the entrance to the next passage, which is just a dark fissure in the far wall. The question that remained was, if the compass could guide them past the gatekeeper, what would be on the other side? Could it be the source of the oblivion itself, or just another layer of this terrifying, forgotten reality? You can only hold your breath and hope that Lyra's memories and yours are strong enough to withstand the unseeing gaze of Custos. With the immense form of Custos grinding slowly behind you, Lyra pulls you through the narrow fissure. The obsidian walls of the passage seem to close in, and the air grows even heavier, charged with a strange, static energy.
Alice.
The space is no longer the cavern of petrified memories, but something different, something that exists on the edge of reality. You have entered the domain of the Oracle of Silent Prophets. These seers, unlike the vocal sibyls of ancient Rome whose prophecies echoed across the empire, do not speak. They communicate through unsettling whispers that you feel not in your ears, but directly in your mind. The Roman fascination with prophecy was profound and pervasive. Every major decision, from declaring war to appointing a new consul, was influenced by the words of seers and the flights of birds. This historical fact is well documented. However, there was a deeply held, though largely unrecorded, fear of prophecies that were too quiet, too subtle, as if they came from a source so ancient and alien that it could be contained by human language. The silence of these prophets was not a choice. It was a symptom of their communion with a deity who spoke in a language of nothingness. As you move deeper, you see them. The silent prophets are not old, robed figures as you might expect. They are young men and women, each with a sliver of polished obsidian covering their mouths, their eyes wide and unblinking. Their bodies are emaciated, and their skin is pale, almost translucent. Their bizarre detail is that they are not rooted in place, but are suspended in midair. Few feet above the ground, their limbs hanging limp, as if they were puppets with their strings cut. This eerie suspension is powered by the god they serve, a god who can manipulate gravity and space, but only in the service of their silent internal monologues. As you and Lyra pass, one of the prophets turns its head slowly. You feel a strange psychic pressure, and a voice, not your own, begins to whisper in your mind. The city of stone sleeps, ... Streams are dust. The labyrinthine urn will remember. when all else forgets. Double quotes. The voice is calm, methodical, and it carries with it a profound sense of sorrow. It is a terrifying form of communication, a psychological intrusion that bypasses your conscious thought and plants a truth that feels both absolute and deeply unsettling. Lyra, visibly disturbed, pulls you along. She knows the danger. These whispers aren't just prophecies. They are seeds of insanity, designed to unravel the mind by revealing a truth too vast for a mortal brain to comprehend. She whispers back, not to the prophet, but to you. They are called the muteness of Minerva in the old texts, a misnomer, of course. Minerva, goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare, would have no part in this. This is the work of a god far older, far more interested in the unraveling of thought than the ordering of it. This is an important observation on the nature of these gods. They're not simply dark mirror images of the Roman Pantheon, but entities from a different, perhaps more fundamental, layer of reality. The passage opens into another chamber, this one filled with what look like stone sarcophagi. But as you get closer, you see they are not for bodies. They are hollow, and inside each one is a single, perfectly smooth, black stone. Lyra points to a symbol etched on one of the sarcophagi. S, the same symbol you saw on the walls in the first chamber. A jagged, intersecting pattern. The whispers from the floating prophets now focus on one item, a beautifully crafted bronze urn sitting on a pedestal in the center of the room. It's covered in intricate, looping patterns that seem to move and writhe as you watch them. This is the labyrinthine urn mentioned in the prophecy. But the question that remained was, what would a vessel that traps and erases mortal memories truly contain? And what could be so dangerous that an entire cult of silent seers was required to guard its existence? As you stare at the urn, you can feel the oppressive weight of all the forgotten things inside it, and a deep-seated fear that your own past, your own identity, could be just another story waiting to be consumed by its dark, spiraling labyrinth. The silence of the prophets and the oppressive weight of the forgotten things in the sarcophagi are nothing compared to the psychic pull of the labyrinthine urn itself. You and Lyra stand before it, the bronze surface shimmering with a strange, hypnotic light. The intricate patterns etched into it are not just decorative. They are a bizarre visual representation of a mind unraveling. As you watch, the lines seem to shift and reconfigure, forming new paths and dead ends, a perfect psychological maze. The urn is a macabre artifact, a repository not of ashes, but of stolen, erased memories. In ancient Rome, memory was everything. The concept of paterfamilias was not just about the living head of the family, but a deep ancestral connection that stretched back generations. To lose one's memory was to lose one's family, one's history, and one's place in the world. This is a crucial historical fact, a pillar of Roman culture that makes the existence of this urn all the more terrifying. It's not just a mythological object. It's a weapon of cultural and psychological annihilation. The bizarre detail of this urn is that when you look at your reflection in its polished surface, you don't see your face as it is. You see a series of fleeting, distorted images of yourself from the past. A child playing with a wooden toy, a teenager laughing with friends, a moment of profound sadness. These are not just reflections. They are memories being offered up for consumption. And as you watch them, you feel a faint, sweet smell, like burnt sugar, emanating from the urn. This is the scent of a memory being devoured. The urn doesn't erase memories by force. It lures them, offering a final, beautiful glimpse before it consumes them completely. Lyra, her face a mask of resolute caution, reaches out a hand, but stops short of touching the urn. She remembers a peculiar, little-known detail from the Roman funeral rites. In some of the more archaic ceremonies, a small, intricate knot was tied into the shroud of the deceased. A knot that was meant to symbolically bind their memories to their spirit. If the knot was untied, it was believed their spirit would wander lost forever. She understands now that the labyrinthine urn is the antithesis of this rite, a tool for deliberately unraveling the knots of a living person's past. The whispers from the silent prophets intensify, the fragmented prophecy repeating in your mind. The city of stone sleeps, ... Its dreams are dust. You realize that the urn is not just trapping memories from mortals, is also a repository of the lost history of the gods themselves. Perhaps the reason the known gods of the Roman Pantheon have forgotten their darker counterparts is because the memories of their existence were trapped inside this very urn. It is a silent, ongoing war. The forgotten gods are slowly feeding on the memory of their own existence, making them even harder to find, even more powerful in their absence. This is a subtle observation on the nature of deities. Their power is not inherent, but is a function of mortal belief, and more profoundly, mortal memory. Lyra now points to a tiny, almost invisible crack on the side of the urn. A faint, almost imperceptible whisper escapes from it, a sound like a distant, lonely sigh. It is the echo of a forgotten god's name, too faint to make out, trapped for eternity within the bronze walls. The urn is not just a container. It is a prison for divine memories. The question that remained was, who was the deity powerful enough to create such an artifact, and what was their ultimate goal? Was it to simply erase the world, or to reshape it into something new, something born from the forgotten and the non-existent? As you stare into the swirling labyrinth of the urn, you can't help but wonder if the path you've chosen is already being erased, one memory at a time. As you and Lyra turn away from the hypnotic, menacing pull of the labyrinthine urn, the air seems to hum with a different kind of energy. The whispers of the silent prophets fade, replaced by a profound artistic stillness. I've stepped into the domain of the architect of shadows. This is not a place of chaotic erasure, but of deliberate, methodical construction. The deity architectus does not build with stone or light, but with the very fabric of forgotten dreams and discarded fears. This is a subtle observation on the nature of these gods. They are not merely destructive, but are also creators, shaping a new reality from the remnants of the old. Ancient Roman architecture, a crucial historical fact, was deeply symbolic. The arch represented strength, the dome represented the heavens, and the layout of a city was meant to be a microcosm of cosmic order. But there was a darker, unwritten rule that every great building required a hidden, psychological foundation. This was the belief in the umbrath, the shadow of a structure, which was said to hold its true essence and purpose. The architect is a terrifying inversion of the divine architect. It's the one who could access these shadows and build with them. The bizarre detail of this deity is that his creations are not static. The walls and columns of this chamber are not made of rock, but of compressed, shifting shadows. As you watch, they writhe and ripple, forming fleeting images of places that never existed. You see a Roman aqueduct that ends in midair, a colosseum with no spectator seats, and a temple with a spire that spirals into nothingness. These are the forgotten, unbuilt projects of mortal architects, given a terrifying second life by Architectus. His domain is not a ruin. It's a ghost city made of what-ifs. He is the master of the non-existent, the patron deity of potential, unfulfilled. Lyra stops, her body tense. She points to a section of the wall where the shadows are particularly thick, congealed into a kind of murky, swirling vortex. She whispers, "The legend speaks of the Black Blueprint, a bizarre artifact held by the Architectus. It's a scroll made not of papyrus, but of condensed nightmares. It doesn't hold plans for new buildings, but for the systematic deconstruction of existing ones, starting from their psychological foundations. It's a terrifying concept. To destroy a city, you don't need a legion. You need to erase its memory from the collective consciousness, a task perfectly suited for the forgotten Pantheon." As you stand there, a new sound emerges from the shadows. It's a faint, mournful hum, like a single, taut wire vibrating in the wind. It's the sound of a forgotten dream, a wish that never came to fruition. You feel a sudden, profound sadness, as if a moment of your own life, a small dream you once had, is being pulled from you and absorbed into the shifting walls. It's a subtle but powerful psychological attack, a direct assault on hope and ambition. The Architectus doesn't just build with shadows, it feeds on the emotional residue of failure and disappointment. He gains power not from what is, but from what could have been. Suddenly, a figure detaches itself from the wall. It's a tall, gaunt man, his form wavering and insubstantial. He has the presence of a great scholar, a philosopher with deep-set, haunted eyes. His clothes are the simple garb of a Roman citizen, yet they, too, are made of shadow. He doesn't speak, but you feel his thoughts as a cold, lucid voice in your mind. "I am Plinius, the one who dared to remember. He gestures to a single petrified stone tablet he holds, covered in the same strange, jagged script you saw earlier. It is the first fragment of forbidden knowledge. But the question that remained was, what devastating truth did this mortal scholar, Plinius, discover that led him to this forgotten realm? And what was the price he paid for it? As you look at the tablet, you know that the journey into the shadows is over, and the true, epic tale of a man's psychological unraveling is about to begin. You are now standing in the presence of Plinius, the mortal who dared to remember. His form, composed of the very shadows of what-ifs and forgotten possibilities, is a testament to the price of his knowledge. He is not a ghost, but a psychological echo, a remnant of a man whose mind was shattered by a truth too vast to contain. He is the keeper of the first fragment of forbidden knowledge, a stone tablet etched with the incomprehensible script of the lost gods. Lyra stands beside you, her hand on the cold stone of the passage, a silent witness to a story that defies heroic myth and embraces psychological horror. The Roman scholar Plinius was a real figure, a crucial historical fact. Though his known life was dedicated to documenting the natural world, not the supernatural, he was a curious, meticulous man who cataloged everything from strange animals to bizarre geological formations. But the legend of the other Plinius, the bizarre detail of this myth, claims that he discovered a hidden library within the walls of a forgotten villa on the coast of Pompeii. This library, sealed off long before the volcano's eruption, contained a collection of scrolls that were strangely blank. Not blank from age, but blank as if the ink itself had been unwritten, a psychological reversal of creation. The stone tablet Plinius holds now is not from that library. It is, in a way, the key to it. It is a physical manifestation of a memory that was supposed to be erased. He holds it with an almost reverent fear, his ghostly fingers trembling. He gestures toward the tablet, and a thought, clear and desperate, forms in your mind. I found it in a tomb, a hidden catacomb beneath the city. Not unlike this one. It was not buried. It was waiting. It resonated with my mind. It did not speak words. But it gave me a memory that was not my own. He recounts how the tablet flooded his consciousness with images of a pantheon he had never heard of a god who created with shadows and a god who fed on oblivion. The sheer psychological terror of this experience, receiving a memory that wasn't your own, a memory of a truth that the world has forgotten, is what broke his mind. His essence now exists as a shadow, a creature of the Architectus, because his human form could not hold the weight of the revelation. This is a profound observation on the nature of deities and mortals. The gods of Olympus are grand and powerful, but they operate within the framework of human comprehension. The lost gods, however, exist on a different plane, one that is fundamentally incompatible with the structure of the human psyche. They are not to be worshipped, but to be forgotten, for their very existence is a form of psychological plague. As Plinius shows you the tablet, you see the strange, jagged lines again. But this time, they seem to shimmer. You catch a brief glimpse of a fleeting image within them. A Roman emperor, his face a mask of serene power, holding an identical tablet. It is a terrifying revelation. The lost gods have not been completely forgotten. They have been co-opted, perhaps even secretly worshipped. The historical facts of the Roman Empire, of its rise and its fall, might have been guided by forces far older and more sinister than anyone knew. The question that remained was, who was this emperor, and what was the devastating price he paid for this forbidden knowledge? Did he, too, become a slave to the lost gods, a shadowy puppet on a grand stage? As Plinius's ghostly form begins to fade back into the shifting walls of shadow, a new, unsettling understanding dawns on you. The knowledge you have gained in this place is not a gift. It is a contagion, and now you, too, have a piece of a memory that was meant to be erased. As the shadowy form of Plinius fades into the architecture of forgotten dreams, the silence returns, heavy and profound. Lyra looks at you, her face grim. You feel a subtle but terrifying shift in your own mind. The fragment of forbidden knowledge from Plinius's tablet, the visual of the unknown emperor, is now a part of you. This is the price of revelation, the central psychological truth of this section. The mind, like a finely tuned instrument, can only hold so much, and you have just added a discordant note. In ancient Roman medical thought, a crucial historical fact, it was believed that the mind was a delicate balance of humors. A shock or profound emotional experience could upset this balance, leading to insania, a form of madness. But this isn't a simple upset of humors. This is a form of cognitive dissonance, a battle between a deeply ingrained reality and a new, terrible truth. You are standing in a place that shouldn't exist, having learned of gods who were never supposed to be, and your brain is struggling to reconcile the two. The bizarre detail of this mental unraveling is that it manifests as a sensory distortion. The air, once heavy with the scent of rot and shadow, now smells faintly of ash and sea salt, as if a distant tragedy is playing out in a different time. You can no longer distinguish between your own memories and the fragments that Plinius left behind. A memory of a family feast is now interlaced with the image of a forgotten temple. A simple act of walking is now accompanied by the echo of a ghost emperor's footsteps. This is not hallucination. It's a terrifying form of cognitive blending, a psychic infection. Lyra understands. She remembers a chilling anecdote from a lost Roman play. A character, a philosopher, learns a truth about the gods that is so terrible, so alien, that he begins to speak in a strange language, a mix of Latin and a primordial tongue that no one has ever heard. He is not possessed. He is simply trying to express a reality that his language, created by mortals for a world of mortal concerns, cannot describe. This is a key observation on the nature of mind and myth. The gods of Olympus were created in our image and for our understanding, but the lost gods are so fundamentally other that they break the very tools we use to comprehend the world. As you and Lyra continue, you notice the ground beneath your feet is no longer solid obsidian. It is a mosaic of fleeting images. A child's face, a soldier's helmet, a hand reaching for a loaf of bread. These are not memories trapped in stone. They are your own memories, now made manifest by the psychological trauma of the last few moments. You are walking on the fragments of your own past. Every step is a deliberate act of destruction. It is a slow psychological assault. The lost gods are not just a danger to the world. They are a direct personal threat to your very identity. Lyra gently pulls you along, her grip firm. She knows that to stop is to fall completely into the trap, to let the visions consume you. The sound of crumbling memories from the first chamber returns, but this time, it feels like the sound of your own consciousness eroding. You feel a strange sense of resignation, a quiet despair. It's the psychological climax of this section. But the question that remained was this mental unraveling an unintended side effect, or was it the ultimate goal of the forgotten gods? Are they simply seeking to be remembered, or are they using mortals as conduits to unmake a reality they despise? As you take another step on the mosaic of your own past, you feel a terrifying sense of inevitability. As the psychological unraveling continues, you and Lyra emerge from the passage of shifting shadows into a chamber of profound stillness. The oppressive feeling of your own eroding memories gives way to a faint, rhythmic sound, a soft, low hum that seems to emanate from the very walls. This is the domain of the whispering stones of the Palatine. The Palatine Hill, a central historical fact, was the place where Rome was founded, the heart of the city's power and its imperial legacy. This particular myth, however, speaks of a lost pre-Roman temple, built on an even older, more sacred Sparta temple, not to Jupiter, but to a forgotten, unnamed entity. The stones in this chamber are said to be the remnants of that temple. The bizarre detail of these stones is their composition. They aren't marble or travertine, but a form of petrified sound, a rock that seems to absorb and release noise. As you touch one, you don't feel a smooth surface. You feel a subtle vibration, a quiet, forgotten hymn that resonates deep in your bones. It's a psychological sensation, the feeling of a truth so old it has been converted from a sound into a physical object.
Wow.
The stones do not whisper words. They hum with the emotional residue of the long-lost faith that was once placed in them.
Wow.
They are a library of silence. Lyra, her mind still intact from the last section's ordeal, gestures to a cluster of the stones. She explains a peculiar local legend from the early Roman Republic. Farmers in the area of the Palatine would often speak of hearing a faint, mournful singing from the ground after a heavy rain, sound they associated with the ghosts of the earliest settlers. It was a sound that made them feel profoundly sad, as if they had lost something they never knew they had. This is an important observation on the nature of these lost gods. Their influence is not overt or grand, but subtle and pervasive, seeping into the folklore and consciousness of a people. You notice that the hum of the stones is not uniform. Some hum with a profound sense of loss, while others pulse with a faint, resentful energy. You remember the cryptic whisper you heard from the silent prophet about the city of stone sleeping? This is what it meant. The city's original pre-Roman identity is not gone. It is simply dormant, a silent, vibrating song held within these stones, waiting to be reawakened. The hum grows louder as you approach a central monolith, a towering pillar that seems to radiate a deep blue light. This pillar is a convergence of all the silent hymns, a nexus of forgotten faith. But the question that remained was, what was the nature of the deity who was worshipped here? Was it a god of silence, a god of memory, or something more terrifying? Is it something that thrived on the absence of sound and the stillness of forgotten truths? As you stare at the central monolith, you feel a pull, a desperate need to touch it and absorb its ancient, unspoken history. But you also feel a deep, psychological fear that doing so might make you a part of its eternal silent song. You know that this journey is not just about finding the lost gods, but about understanding the very nature of what it means to be forgotten. The hum of the whispering stones grows louder, coalescing into a single, resonant frequency that seems to vibrate at the edge of your perception. You and Lyra stand before the central monolith, a pillar of petrified sound that glows with a faint blue light. It is here that the myth of a mysterious goddess, Tempest, begins to unfold. She is not the Roman Chronos, the personification of linear time. Tempest is the goddess of fractured time, of moments that never happened, and of the temporal paradoxes that exist in the great, forgotten what-ifs. This is a terrifying, psychological concept, the idea that time is not a river, but a shattered mirror, and some pieces have been cast into oblivion. In ancient Rome, the measurement of time, a crucial historical fact, was deeply tied to the cycles of the sun and moon and the succession of consuls. Time was orderly, predictable, and linear. But there was a strange, little-known superstition among some of the oldest families of the Palatine, a belief in lost days, periods of time that would simply vanish from memory, causing profound disorientation. This was the work of Tempest, the bizarre detail of this deity. She doesn't steal time. She simply erases the memory of its passing, leaving a void in its wake. This is a subtle observation on the nature of these gods. They are not grand destroyers, but surgeons of reality, performing delicate, unmaking operations on the fabric of existence. As you stare at the glowing monolith, you feel a peculiar sensation, a memory of a moment from your own past. A simple conversation, a quiet dinner feels suddenly foreign, as if you are watching it happen to someone else. The emotional connection is gone. This is the handiwork of Tempest, her influence seeping out from her domain. She is not a god of forgetting, but of unexperiencing, leaving only a hollow shell of its memory. It's a profound psychological horror. Lyra, her face a mask of solemn understanding, points to a faint inscription on the pillar. It's not the jagged, incomprehensible script of the lost gods, but a form of archaic Latin. It reads, "She weeps for the moments that were never born." Lyra explains a historical fact, a quirk of Roman legal history. There were certain ancient laws concerning damnatio memoria, the act of formally erasing a person from all records, but there were also legal debates about a more subtle form of unexistence. The removal of a person not just from the public record, but from the collective memory itself. It was considered a fate worse than death. This is the power of Tempest, the ability to erase not just a life, but the memory of that life having ever happened. Suddenly, a shimmering, ephemeral form begins to coalesce from the blue light of the monolith. It is the goddess herself, a figure made of flickering moments and fleeting echoes. She is beautiful, but sorrowful, her face a mosaic of expressions that shift and change with every passing second. Her tears, you notice, are not water, but perfectly formed droplets of solid time, small crystals that contain entire unlived moments. But the question that remained was, why was she weeping? And what was the great, unlived moment that was so tragic it caused her to fracture the very nature of time? Was she a victim of the other lost gods? Or a key player in a cosmic tragedy that Rome's history has been constructed to hide? As you watch her ephemeral form, you realize that the lost gods are not a unified force, but a collection of beings, each with their own terrible personal history and their own profound psychological power. The ephemeral form of the goddess Tempest, weeping tears of unlived moments, begins to fade back into the monolith. As she dissolves, the silence that followed her departure is quickly replaced by a new, more insidious sound, the soft, dry rustle of scales. You and Lyra, still disoriented by the temporal assault, have stumbled into the domain of the Serpent of Stolen Identity. This is not a grand mythical beast, but a smaller, more terrifying creature that can wear the faces of others. The Roman Pantheon has its share of shapeshifters, but this serpent is a psychological predator, not a physical one. The Roman fascination with masks and identity, a crucial historical fact, is deeply ingrained in society. From the theatrical masks of the stage to the death masks of ancestors displayed in the home, your identity was not just your own, it was a reflection of your family, your status, and your place in the public sphere. To lose your face was to lose yourself. This is the profound psychological truth that the serpent preys upon. The bizarre detail of this creature is that it does not wear a new face. It absorbs the essence of a person's identity and then wears their face. Like a costume, complete with their voice, their mannerisms, and their memories. It is a perfect, insidious mimic. As you watch, a small black serpent with scales like obsidian begins to slither from the shadows. Its head, however, is not that of a serpent. It is a perfectly rendered but hollow human face. The expression on the face shifts with unnerving speed, from a look of profound sorrow to one of cold, calculating cruelty. Lyra clutches the eroding compass tightly. She remembers a chilling Roman folktale about a strange phenomenon called visius diminutus, or the diminished face. It was a superstition that if you looked at a stranger and their face seemed to be out of focus, like a reflection in rippling water, it was a sign that their identity had been stolen. The belief was that the serpent would come and take your face next. It's a key observation on the nature of these lost gods and their minions. They are not interested in grand battles, but in the slow, meticulous dismantling of the mortal world, one psyche at a time. The serpent stops before a set of 2 stone doors. Its head, the human face, turns toward you and Lyra. The face belongs to a Roman soldier, one you think you recognize from a statue you saw in the Forum. The serpent soldier speaks, its voice a hollow, mournful whisper. Remember that cryptic whisper you heard? The city of stone sleeps, ... The whispers of the silent prophets were a warning. The city of Rome is not just stone and mortar. It is a repository of stolen identities, of faces and memories absorbed by this creature. The horrifying truth dawns on you. Every face that was ever diminished or unfocused by the superstition was not a sign of an oncoming tragedy, but of a tragedy that had already occurred. The serpent is a key player in the grand psychological unmaking of the known world. The serpent soldier hisses, and its head shifts again. Now the face is that of a young, beautiful woman with a look of serene peace. But the peace is a mockery. It's a facade. The woman's identity has been consumed. But the question that remained was, where does a serpent take the identities it steals? And what is the final destination of these countless forgotten lives? Is there a place where they are stored, a psychological graveyard for all the unbeings and the unlived? As the serpent with the stolen face slithers away, you feel a deep, unsettling fear that your own identity could be just another trophy for this silent predator. The serpent of stolen identity, its face a constantly shifting mosaic of forgotten lives, slithers through the stone doors, which close behind it with a soft, final click. Lyra, her face pale, pushes on the doors, but they are fused with an otherworldly energy. There is no going back. The path ahead is now the only way. You have entered the final, most terrifying chamber of the lost Pantheon's domain, the lost library of Oblivion. This is not a place of scrolls and books, but of non-existent history and people who never were. The Great Library of Alexandria, a crucial historical fact, was not just a collection of scrolls. It was the symbolic heart of human knowledge, a repository of our collective memory. The loss of a library was, to the ancient world, a profound cultural tragedy. The lost Library of Oblivion is the terrifying antithesis of that. It is a place dedicated not to the preservation of knowledge, but to its deliberate, systematic erasure. The bizarre detail of this library is that its shelves are not filled with books, but with what look like perfectly preserved human husks. Their skin is like dry parchment, their bodies hollow. As you get closer, you see that these are not bodies at all, but the physical forms of people who were completely erased from memory. They are the non-beings, the ones whose faces were stolen by the serpent. The shelves are a chilling visual representation of the horrifying truth. Once a person is forgotten, they are not just gone from the mind. They are unmade, their physical form reduced to an empty, preserved shell. This is a profound psychological horror. Lyra takes a step back, her eyes wide. She remembers a Roman legal superstition from the late Republic. If a person was accused of a crime so heinous that their name was not to be spoken, they were sentenced to a symbolic unnaming where their names were struck from all public records. It was a form of social death. She now understands that this was not just a legal custom. It was a ritualistic act of preparation, making a person's identity susceptible to the serpent of stolen identity and its masters in the lost Pantheon. The unnamed were not just shunned. They were being prepared for unbeing. The air in the library is sterile, devoid of the scent of dust or parchment. It smells of nothingness, of a profound metaphysical emptiness. As you walk between the shelves of husks, you feel a strange sense of empathy, a silent sorrow for all the lives that were so perfectly erased. Each husk is a testament to the power of the forgotten gods. They do not kill, they uncreate. Suddenly you hear a new sound. It's not a whisper or a hum, but a sound like a single distant bell tolling. You hear it again and again, and with each toll, a husk on a shelf dissolves into a fine dust. The sound is coming from a central podium, where a single golden scroll is unrolled. It is the scroll of uncreation, an artifact of the lost gods. It doesn't contain knowledge, it contains anti-knowledge, a list of people and things to be unmade. This is the central repository of oblivion. But the question that remained was, who wrote this scroll, and who was powerful enough to orchestrate the mass erasure of entire lives and histories? Was it a single omnipotent god? Or was it a ritualistic pact between all the forgotten gods to ensure their continued existence? As you stare at the horrifying husk of a Roman senator you recognize from history, you know that the true purpose of the lost Pantheon is not just to be remembered, but to rewrite reality itself. The sound of the distant bell tolls again, and another husk dissolves into dust. You and Lyra are surrounded by the chilling, macabre library of the unmade, with the golden scroll of uncreation at its heart. The weight of this revelation is immense. The forgotten gods are not content with just being unknown. They are actively erasing the world of mortals to consolidate their own power. This is not just a myth. It is a profound psychological war for reality itself. In ancient Rome, the concept of a pact with the void, a crucial historical fact, was not an abstract idea, but a literal ritual. Priests of the old religion would perform ritualistic sacrifices to prevent plagues, famines, and other calamities. But there was a more terrible, unrecorded ritual, the ritus vacuus, or a ritual of the void, a desperate pact made to prevent the return of the lost gods. The bizarre detail of this ritual was that the sacrifice was not an animal, but a memory. A person would offer up their most cherished memory, the face of a lost child, the feeling of a first. Love on a priest would use a bizarre artifact, a small black mirror called the speculum oblivionis, to trap the memory and then shatter it, releasing the emotional energy into the void. Lyra recognizes the concept. She points to a faint etching on the podium beneath the golden scroll. It's a diagram of this exact ritual, she whispers. The Senate knew. The highest echelons of Roman society knew about the lost gods and the pact that was made to banish them. The historical record of the Roman Republic, so meticulously kept, is a gilded cage built to protect us from a truth so terrible it would unravel the minds of men. This is a key observation on the nature of history and power. History is not just a record of what happened, but a deliberate act of forgetting what was. The bell tolls again, a final, hollow sound that echoes through the library. The golden scroll glows with an eerie light, and a name appears on its surface, etched in a jagged script. Lyra. She gasps, her hand flying to her mouth. You feel a profound, soul-crushing terror. The lost gods have not forgotten her. She is on the list of those to be unmade. Her transgression, the lie about the spring of eternal water, was not a punishment from the Senate, but a deliberate act of betrayal. She was sent here as a sacrifice, a memory to be unmade in a final terrible pact. The psychological climax of this section is the understanding that the rituals of ancient Rome were not just for the public good, but for the dark, secret machinations of a few. The Roman Empire, the grand and powerful force that shaped the world, was built on a foundation of silence and sacrifice. The very people who ruled the world were secretly making pacts with the void to keep their power, to keep the lost gods at bay, but at the cost of countless forgotten lives and memories. But the question that remained was, who was the true master of this ritual? Who was the one pulling the strings, not just in this chamber, but in the Roman Senate itself? Was there a single mortal emissary of the deep who orchestrated this terrifying ongoing pact? As you look at the name on the scroll and at the horrified expression on Lyra, his face, you know that the final confrontation is not with a mythical beast, but with a human truth so dark it was buried for all time. The name Lyra glows on the golden scroll of uncreation, a final, horrifying truth revealed. You and Lyra stand in the heart of Oblivion, facing the consequence of her betrayal. But the story doesn't end here. The terrifying truth of this section is that the ongoing ritual of forgetting is orchestrated by a mortal and emissary of the deep. This is not a priest or a king, but a mortal chosen by the forgotten gods to spread their silent influence and maintain the delicate balance of their existence. The Roman fascination with omens and divine will, a crucial historical fact, was not just about predicting the future, but about finding mortals who were divinely touched, or divus. The emperors themselves were eventually deified, blurring the line between man and God. But the myth of the emissary is a darkened version of this idea. This individual is not divinely touched, but divinely infected, a psychological host for the will of the lost gods. The bizarre detail of the emissary is their physical manifestation. They are not a grand figure, but a gaunt, unassuming librarian. His face is blank as a piece of unwritten papyrus. As he emerges from behind the shelves of human husks, you see that he has a small, black mirror. The speculum Oblivion is embedded in his chest, a subtle observation on the nature of these gods and their chosen. He is a walking, breathing monument to memory loss. The mirror reflects no light, but absorbs it, and as he walks, the husks on the shelves around him seem to fade even more, as if his very presence is a force of erasure. The librarian, his voice calm and methodical, is the one who is meant to make the pact. To unmake Lyra, he speaks, and his voice is a strange, unsettling echo of all the stolen identities you have seen. The Senate did not know the full truth, he says. They only knew the need for a pact, but I know the purpose. The lost gods do not wish to destroy Rome. They wish to perfect it. They wish to create a world where every memory is chosen, every history is pure, and every imperfection is forgotten. They are the gods of true order, and I am their instrument. He explains a chilling historical fact, a forgotten legend about the librarian of the void, a figure who would wander the catacombs, collecting the stories of the forgotten and the unloved, and in doing so, would gain immense power over the living. The librarian you see now is the physical embodiment of this legend. He is the one who wrote Lyra's name on the golden scroll, not out of malice, but out of a perverse sense of duty. He believes he is an artist, and the lives he erases are simply a part of his grand cosmic design. Lyra stands frozen, her face a mask of terror. She sees a vision in the black mirror of the librarian's chest, a fleeting image of herself as a young girl, playing with her brother in the Roman countryside. The memory is clear, but it has a strange, detached quality. It's a preview of what is to come. The librarian is showing her the memory he is about to consume. But the question that remained was, who was the true master of this emissary? Was it the collective will of the lost Pantheon, Or was there a single unknown deity pulling all the strings from the darkest corners of the cosmos?
As
As the librarian raises his hand toward Lyra, ready to fulfill his terrible duty, you know that the confrontation is not just about saving her, but about finding the true source of this uncreation, a truth that might be more terrifying than the library itself. The librarian, the emissary of the deep, raises his hand toward Lyra, his black, mirror-like chest reflecting a fragmented, distorted image of her past. But before he can complete the pact, a new sound shatters the silence of the library. It's not a whisper or a hum, but a sound like a single, impossibly loud note from a golden trumpet echoing through the tunnels. This is the sound of the unseen war on Olympus, the secret conflict between the known and unknown pantheons. The gods of Olympus, the gods of the sun-drenched marble and the grand temples, are not ignorant of this dark pantheon. They are fighting a war against them, a war of which mortals are completely unaware. The Roman Pantheon, a crucial historical fact, is deeply organized, with each deity having their own domain and their own sphere of influence. But the Roman Senate and the priests who served them always kept a few secret cults under tight control. Cults dedicated to minor deities of the harvest, the home, and other small personal things. This was the bizarre detail of the Olympian gods' strategy. They created a vast public pantheon to occupy the minds and faiths of mortals, while secretly preserving a few minor gods as a kind of psychic armor. The belief in these small personal deities was a psychological bulwark against the vast, consuming power of the lost gods. The golden trumpet sounds again, and the librarian recoils, as if struck. The black mirror on his chest shatters, not with a physical sound, but with a sound like 1,000 memories suddenly returning. He screams, and his form begins to waver. Lyra, seizing the moment, grabs the golden scroll of uncreation from the podium. As she touches it, a new name appears on its surface, not her own, but that of the librarian, curator. He is no longer an anonymous functionary of Oblivion. He's a being with a name, and to have a name is to be vulnerable to being remembered. The war between the pantheons, a key observation on the nature of deities, is not one of fire and steel, but of memory and forgetting. The lost gods gain power when a mortal is forgotten. The Olympian gods gain power when they are remembered and worshipped. The golden trumpet note was not just a sound, it was a pure, unadulterated thought, a powerful, focused memory of a forgotten battle, a tactic in the great war for human consciousness. The library of husks begins to shake as the reality of the two pantheons clashes. The husks, the unmade, begin to tremble. Hush. Some of them, those whose names were recently on the scroll, begin to coalesce, their forms slowly returning from a state of nothingness. The librarian curator, his face a mask of profound agony, begins to fade into the dust of his own making. He is being unmade by the very thing he sought to create, a world of forgetting. He is no longer the master of Oblivion, he is its victim. But the question that remained was, what was the ultimate goal of the Olympian gods in this unseen war? Were they fighting to save mortals, or were they fighting for their own survival against a threat that could erase them all? As Lyra holds the scroll, her face pale but resolute, you realize that the battle for Rome's future is not just a mortal concern, but a cosmic one, a war between memory and oblivion, between being and non-being. The librarian, now just a wisp of smoke, is unmade by the memory of his own existence. Lyra holds the golden scroll of uncreation, a terrifying artifact. But the silence that follows is not a victory. It is a stillness, broken only by the faint cosmic hum of the unseen war. This is the moment when the prophecy of the fading stars is revealed in ancient prediction about the universe's ultimate unmaking. The Roman Empire, a crucial historical fact, was built on an almost fanatical belief in its own eternity. They believed in Eternitas, the personification of eternal existence, and the Saeculum, the long cycle of time that would inevitably renew itself. This prophecy is a darkened version of that belief, a terrifying truth whispered by a god who sees not the end of Rome, but the end of everything. The bizarre detail of this prophecy is that it is not spoken in words, but in a sequence of colors that only the human mind can perceive when under profound stress. As Lyra holds the scroll, you feel a terrible rush of emotion, and in your mind's eye, you see a swirling vortex of colors, a deep, profound black, the color of oblivion, a shimmering pale blue, the color of a star dying of memory loss, and a violent, jarring red, the color of uncreation. Each color is a line of the prophecy, a psychological verse in a cosmic poem. It predicts that when the final star in the known universe fades, the lost gods will return to claim their rightful place. Not in the mortal world, but in a world that has been completely erased. Lyra, her face grim, remembers a strange, little-known historical anecdote from the Roman Senate. On the night of the assassination of Julius Caesar, there were whispers of a comet appearing in the sky, a comet that seemed to fade in and out of existence. The official story was that it was an omen of Caesar's apotheosis, his deification. But the legend among a few secret cults was that it was a fragment of a fading star, a physical manifestation of the prophecy itself. It was a sign not of a new god, but of a coming apocalypse. This is a subtle observation on the nature of prophecy and power. The powerful can twist even the most terrifying omens to their own benefit. But the truth remains, waiting for a mind brave enough to perceive it. As you look at the colors, you understand the horrifying truth. The lost gods are not just interested in Rome, they're interested in the cosmos. They are not just the gods of forgetting, but the gods of the final, great erasure. The seen war on Olympus is not just a battle for human belief, but a race against time, a desperate attempt by the Olympian gods to build a powerful enough empire of memory to withstand the coming of the lost Pantheon. The golden trumpet from the last section wasn't just a sound, it was an echo of a celestial battle, a desperate call to arms in a war that has been raging for millennia. But the question that remained was, who was the deity powerful enough to see the end of everything? And what was their ultimate purpose in this grand cosmic tragedy? Was it a god of truth? A being who could not stand the fleeting, ephemeral nature of mortal life? Or was it a god of pure, unadulterated nihilism? As you look at the fading stars in your mind's eye, you know that the final confrontation is not just with a god, but with the concept of nothingness itself. The prophecy of the fading stars, a terrible cosmic truth, now fills your mind. And the golden scroll of uncreation feels heavy in Lyra's hands. The unseen war is not just a battle for Rome's future, but for the universe itself. This is the moment you encounter the weaver of destinies unmade. This is not a god of creation or destruction, but a deity who unravels fates and erases individuals from existence. The Roman concept of fatum, or destiny, a crucial historical fact, was a powerful, almost inescapable force, woven by the three fates, Nona, Decima, and Morta. But this weaver is not one of them. She is their dark mirror, a psychological inversion of everything they represent. The bizarre detail of this deity is that her loom is not made of threads of gold or silver, but of shadows. The fibers she uses are the subtle, almost unseen connections between people. A shared smile, a casual conversation, a forgotten act of kindness. She is the goddess of misconnections and unfulfilled promises. As she works, her needles do not weave new destinies. They snip and unravel the old ones. The result is not death, but unbeing. A person is not gone from the world. They simply never were. This is a profound observation on the nature of these gods. Their power is not a blunt instrument, but a subtle, terrifying form of psychological surgery on the fabric of reality itself. You and Lyra, still in the chamber of the library, feel a sudden, profound chill. You hear a sound like a single, taut thread snapping. You feel a pang of loss for a friend you just remembered. But a moment later, the memory is gone, as if it never happened. This is the work of the Weaver. She is not a grand, mythical figure, but a small, hunched deity who works in the shadows, unmaking one life at a time. The psychological horror of this is immense. You are not just a spectator. You are a potential victim. Lyra, holding the golden scroll, points to a faint inscription on its surface. It's a list of names, but they are not the names of the living. They are the names of the unmade, the ones who were erased from existence by the Weaver. She whispers, "Remember the legend of the Roman family that vanished from the city, not in a tragedy, but as if they had never lived there." The historical records were completely silent on their fate. It was a sign not of a tragedy, but of the Weaver's work. She understands now that the lost Pantheon has been active for millennia. A silent, pervasive force working to unmake the world as we know it. The Weaver, sensing your presence, turns her single, milky white eye toward you. She is not angry or malevolent. She is simply a being of purpose, a cold, methodical artist. She raises her needle, and a faint, shimmering thread of light appears, leading from Lyra to her family to her loved ones. The Weaver is about to cut that thread, to unmake Lyra from the past, to make it so that she never was. But the question that remained was, what was the ultimate goal of the Weaver of Destiny's unmade? Was she an agent of a more powerful god, or was she simply fulfilling her own terrible cosmic purpose? As the needle comes closer to Lyra's thread of fate, you realize that the final confrontation is not with a god of fire or thunder, but with a being who holds your very existence in her hand, a being of pure, unadulterated oblivion. The Weaver of Destiny's unmade, her needle poised to snip Lyra's thread of fate, is a terrifying sight. But the truth of her existence is only half the story. The other half is the Shadow Emperor's rise. The terrifying historical secret that an emperor of Rome unknowingly worships the lost gods and gains eerie power from them. The Roman emperors, a crucial historical fact, were not just political figures but living gods, the central pillars of the Roman cult of personality. But the myth of the Shadow Emperor, a bizarre detail of this narrative, is a darkened version of this. He is not a god but a conduit, his power a parasitic force granted to him by the very deities of Oblivion. The Weaver, in a sudden, jarring move, drops her needle. She turns to a small, dark corner of the library, where the shadows have congealed into a human form. It is a man, dressed in the simple toga of a Roman citizen, but his face is a perfect, flawless reflection of calm power. This is the Shadow Emperor, a man so consumed by the lost gods that he no longer has a name. He is just a title, an idea, a vessel. Lyra gasps. She recognizes the face. It is the same face you saw in the fragment of memory from the scholar Plinius. This is the emperor who is prophesied to become a slave to the lost gods. The emperor speaks, and his voice is not his own. It is a chorus of whispers of all the stolen identities and forgotten memories you have encountered so far. The Roman Empire is not an empire of stone and men, he says. It is an empire of forgetting. Every war, every plague, every tragic fire was not a misfortune, but a ritualistic act of erasure, a sacrifice to the lost gods. I am not a king. I'm a gardener, and the world is my garden. I pluck the weeds of unwanted memories, of unloved lives, and I give them to the lost gods to ensure their strength. He explains a chilling historical fact. Roman emperors, in moments of extreme crisis, would often decree a damnatio memoria for entire regions, not just individuals. The official story was that it was a political punishment, but the truth was a ritualistic act of offering a large number of memories to the lost gods, a psychological feeding frenzy. The emperor smiles, and the Weaver, sensing her master, resumes her work. But now she is not just working on Lyra's thread of fate, she is working on the threads of the entire world. She is unmaking not just lives, but entire civilizations. This is a subtle observation on the nature of power. The lost gods do not need to fight a grand war with the Olympians. They have a mortal emissary, a chosen king, to do their work for them. A king who can unmake the world one quiet, political decree at a time. The Shadow Emperor is not a man of flesh and blood, but a psychological concept. The embodiment of a civilization's slow and deliberate descent into oblivion. But the question that remained was, what was the Shadow Emperor's ultimate goal, and what terrifying truth did he discover that made him align with the lost gods? Was he a madman or a visionary who saw that the only way to save the world was to erase it? As the Emperor gestures to a small hidden room in the corner of the library, you realize that the final revelation is about to be made. A truth that might be more horrifying than any god or monster you have encountered so far. The Shadow Emperor, his face a perfect mask of calm power, gestures to a small, hidden room. Lyra, her face a mask of terror, grips the scroll of uncreation even tighter. Even tighter, you enter the room, and the air here is different. It is not heavy with dust or silent with the weight of forgotten memories. It is filled with a profound, terrifying stillness. You have stepped into the city that never was, a terrifying, unmade Roman city that was wiped from all records. The Roman urban landscape, a crucial historical fact, was built with meticulous precision, every street and every building having a clear purpose and a documented history. This city is the antithesis of that. The bizarre detail of this place is that it is not a ruin. It is a perfect, ghostly replica of a Roman city, complete with streets and buildings. But everything is made of a strange, translucent material. It is a city made of silence, of the things that were never spoken and the memories that were never recorded. There are no inhabitants, no sounds, no smells. It is a perfect, flawless void. You remember the cryptic whisper you heard from the silent prophet about the city of stone that sleeps? This is what it meant. The city of Rome has a twin, a shadow self that was unmade and put to sleep by the lost gods. The shadow emperor gestures to a small, translucent building. He explains a terrifying historical fact: the existence of a Roman settlement called Veritas, a city dedicated to truth, where every citizen was compelled to record their most honest, unvarnished memories and dreams. The city, he explains, was not destroyed by a natural disaster or an invading army. It was erased. The lost gods, in their eternal war with the Olympians, saw Veritas as a threat, a repository of pure truth that could unravel their entire empire of oblivion. They used the Weaver of Destinies unmade to unmake the entire city, not by destroying it, but by simply making it so that it never was. The psychological horror of this is immense. You are not just looking at a ghost city. You are looking at a wound in reality itself, a place where the rules of time and space have been bent to a dark new purpose. The Shadow Emperor, his voice a calm, methodical whisper, points to a small, translucent figure in the center of the city. It's a statue of a goddess, but her face is a blur, a perfect, empty slate. She is the deity of silence, the goddess of the unspoken, the patron saint of this ghost city. But the question that remained was, what was the ultimate goal of the Shadow Emperor and the lost gods? Was it to simply unmake the world, or was it to rebuild it in their own image? A world where every memory is a lie, and every truth is a silent secret. As the Emperor gestures to a small, shimmering artifact in the center of the silent city, you realize that the final confrontation, God, is not with a god, but with the very nature of truth and falsehood of memory and oblivion. The Shadow Emperor, his voice a chorus of whispers, gestures to a small, shimmering artifact in the center of the silent city of Veritas. It is not an urn, a scroll, or a compass. It is a mirror, suspended in midair. This is the mirror of infinite regret. It reflects only the deepest sorrow and forgotten paths. The Roman concept of nemesis, a crucial historical fact, is not just about vengeance, but about a divine justice that punishes pride and hubris. This mirror is a darkened version of that. It is not about justice, but about a profound psychological punishment, a weapon of pure, unadulterated sorrow. The bizarre detail of this artifact is that it does not reflect your physical form. It reflects a past version of yourself, one who made a different choice. As you approach, you see your reflection, but it is not you. It is a version of you who took a different path, who chose a different career, who said a different word. And the person in the mirror is weeping, not from a simple sadness, but from a profound, soul-crushing regret for the life you are living now. This is a terrifying psychological truth. The mirror does not reflect what you could have been. It reflects a life that is perpetually filled with sorrow for the life you have. Lyra looks into the mirror, and her face contorts with a silent, agonizing pain. She sees a version of herself who never betrayed the Senate, who lived a happy, simple life, who never descended into the catacombs. And that version of her is weeping, and with each tear, a small part of the life she is living now seems to vanish. The mirror is a psychological parasite, feeding on regret and sorrow, using it to unmake the present. The Shadow Emperor, his voice full of a cold, methodical satisfaction, explains a chilling historical fact. A Roman emperor, in a moment of profound political failure, would often look into a mirror that was said to show his past glories. But the real myth was that the mirror did not show glories. It showed all the things he could have done to avoid failure. And each time he looked, a part of his empire would crumble. Shadow Emperor looks into the mirror, and a fleeting image appears. A young, idealistic Roman philosopher who wanted to change the world. The image is filled with a profound, quiet despair. The emperor explains that he was that man, and the mirror showed him that every one of his noble intentions would lead to chaos and ruin. He chose to look away, to embrace the lost gods, to unmake a world that was destined for pain. He is not a villain. He is a man who was psychologically broken by a mirror that showed him a future filled with sorrow, a future he now seeks to erase. But the question that remained was, what was the ultimate purpose of this psychological assault? Was it to simply unmake a person, or to turn them into an emissary for the lost gods? As the Shadow Emperor gestures to the golden scroll of uncreation, a new name appears on its surface. Not yours, but the name of the goddess of a mirror, deity, who was banished from the Pantheon for showing mortals a truth they could not bear to see. The Shadow Emperor, his face a reflection of a profound, quiet despair, looks into the mirror of infinite regret, and the name of a forgotten goddess appears on the golden scroll of uncreation. Lyra, her hand trembling, points to the scroll. The name is Spectra, the goddess of reflections and hidden truths. She was the deity of the mirror. This is the final whisper of truth, the climax of the narrative, the terrifying realization of the lost god's true nature. The Roman Empire, a crucial historical fact, was built on a series of public triumphs and grand narratives. But the truth, the core of this myth, is that it was built on a series of political and psychological lies, and the forgotten gods were the ones who kept those lies from unraveling. The bizarre detail of this final revelation is that the lost gods are not gods at all. They're not beings of divine power or cosmic will. They're not of the heavens or the underworld. They are psychological concepts given form by the collective human consciousness. Tenebris is the fear of being forgotten. Custos is the fear of being seen for who you truly are. Architectus is the fear of unfulfilled potential. Tempest is the sorrow for a moment that could have been. The serpent is the fear of losing your identity. The weaver is the fear of a life unlived. And Spectra is the profound, terrifying regret of all the choices you didn't make. The Shadow Emperor, his voice now calm and clear, without the chorus of whispers, explains a chilling historical fact. The Roman Senate, in its great wisdom, had a secret sect of priests dedicated to the study of the human psyche, a field they called anima sapientia, or the wisdom of the soul. They discovered that fear and sorrow were not just emotions. They were living things, mental parasites that could feed on a person's life force. They also discovered that these parasites, when given a name and a form, could be controlled. This is a profound psychological truth. The lost gods were not gods. They were personified fears, and the Roman Empire, in its arrogance, thought it could control them? The mirror of infinite regret in the center of the silent city begins to crack. A single hairline fracture appears, and from it, a brilliant white light streams out. The light is not a reflection, it is a memory. It is the memory of the Roman people, the collective sorrow and regret that was trapped in the mirror for centuries. The mirror shatters, and the light fills the city, and the translucent buildings begin to take on a faint color, the color of a life that was finally remembered. But the question that remained was, what happened when the lost gods, the personified fears, were finally remembered? Would they become gods of a new pantheon, or would they be so powerful they would consume the world? As the light fills the room, you realize that the final confrontation is not with a deity, but with a terrifying cosmic truth about the nature of fear and the power of memory. The mirror of infinite regret shatters, and a brilliant white light streams out, filling the silent, unmade city of Veritas. The light is not a reflection, but a torrent of memories, a collective release of centuries of trapped sorrow and regret. This is the moment of a chilling revelation. The gods who feed on forgetting. The Roman Empire, a crucial historical fact, was not just built on military might and political cunning. It was built on a deliberate, systematic act of forgetting, a ritualistic unmaking of those who threatened the established order. This is the profound psychological truth that the lost gods were not just passive deities. They were a parasitic force, a cosmic vacuum cleaner that fed on the detritus of human consciousness. The bizarre detail of this revelation is their sustenance. They do not feed on prayers or sacrifice. They feed on absence. The sorrow of a forgotten life, the potential of an unlived moment, the regret of a choice not made, these are their food. This is an important observation on the nature of these gods. They are not sustained by belief, but by the lack of it. They are not powerful because they are worshipped, but because they are unknown. They are the personification of the great, silent nothingness that exists when something that should have been never was.
Hey.
The light from the shattered mirror, now a living, breathing thing, coalesces into a new form. A figure made of pure, unadulterated memory. It is a new goddess, born from the remnants of the old. She is not Spectra, the goddess of reflections and hidden truths. She is Mnemosyne, the goddess of memory, a name you recognize from Greek mythology. The Olympians, in their war with the forgotten gods, did not fight with swords and fire. They fought with a single, powerful psychological weapon, the Greek Pantheon itself, a system of deities built on memory, narrative, and the grand epic tales of heroes and gods. The Roman Pantheon was an echo of that, a desperate attempt to build a memory-based society that could withstand the onslaught of oblivion. The Shadow Emperor, his face now etched with profound regret, looks at the new goddess. He understands now. The lost god's ultimate goal was not to simply unmake the world, it was to consume it, to turn it into a source of unending sustenance. The golden scroll of uncreation was not a weapon, it was a feeding list. He was not a king, he was a farmer, and the lives he unmade were the crops. But the question that remained was, what was the ultimate choice to be made? To remember and risk a full-scale war with the forgotten gods, or to forget and become a part of their terrible, endless feast? As the new goddess of memory looks at you and Lyra, you know that the final choice is not a political or a military one. It is a profound psychological and moral dilemma that could determine the fate of not just Rome, but the entire world. The new goddess, Mnemosyne, a being of pure memory, stands before you and Lyra. The mirror of infinite regret is shattered.
Ow.
The lost god's sustenance is gone, and the scroll of uncreation is blank. But the terrifying truth of this section is the choice of oblivion, the ultimate dilemma. To remember and risk a full-scale war with the forgotten gods, a war that could unravel the cosmos, or to forget and become a part of their terrible, endless feast. This is a profound psychological and moral dilemma that Rome and its people have faced for millennia. And now you must face it. The Roman Empire, a crucial historical fact, was built on a series of historical fictions and political myths. The story of Romulus and Remus, the founding myth of Rome, was a powerful tool of unity, but it was not the only truth. There were other older stories of the founding of Rome, stories that were deliberately erased to create a single, cohesive narrative. This is the bizarre detail of the Roman psyche. They were a people who, in their pragmatic way, understood the power of a good lie and the necessity of a good forgetting. Lyra, her face a mask of solemn resolve, looks at you. She holds the blank scroll. She says, "The Romans did not forget the lost gods out of ignorance. They forgot them out of a conscious, deliberate choice. They chose to build a world of heroes and gods, a world of grand narratives, because the alternative was a world of terror and unbeing. They chose to live in the light, even if it meant denying the truth of the shadows." This is a key observation on the nature of mortals and deities. The gods of Olympus were not just worshipped. They were willed into existence by a people who desperately needed a reason to hope, a reason to fight, a reason to remember. The new goddess, Mnemosyne, is not a goddess of judgment. She is a goddess of choice. She does not compel you to remember. She simply shows you what remembering truly is. She shows you a future where Rome, in its full memory, embraces its every flaw, every war, every betrayal. It is a city of unbearable truth, a city where every citizen is a living archive of pain and sorrow. And she shows you a future where Rome, in its forgetting, becomes a city of beautiful lies, a place of peace and prosperity, a place where the shadows are always at bay. The psychological climax of this section is the understanding that the lost gods are not just a danger to the world. They are a direct personal threat to the individual's psyche. They are the personification of the parts of ourselves we choose to forget, the parts of ourselves we deny. The choice is not just about Rome, it is about your own mind. Do you choose to live with every single moment of your life, the good and the bad? Or do you choose to live a life of peaceful, beautiful lies? But the question that remained was, what would be the aftermath of this choice? And what would be the lasting legacy of a pantheon that was so terrifying it had to be forgotten? As you and Lyra stand in the silent city, faced with the ultimate choice, you know that the final confrontation is not with a god, but with a terrifying cosmic truth about the nature of humanity itself. You and Lyra stand in the silent city of Veritas, the shattered mirror of infinite regret behind you, and the goddess Mnemosyne before you. The choice has been made, though you are not yet aware of it. The echoes that remain are not the cries of a vanquished foe, but the profound, lingering presence of the forgotten. The lost gods have not been destroyed. They have simply been returned to their dormant state. They are a part of the human psyche, a dark, primordial truth that can be forgotten but never truly erased. The Roman belief in the cyclical nature of time, a crucial historical fact, was not just a philosophy, but a deep, psychological bulwark against the fear of an end. The lost gods, however, are a threat to this cycle. They are the deities of a linear final end, but they have been contained for now. This is a crucial observation on the nature of deities and mortals. The gods are not all-powerful. They're a function of human belief and a reflection of human consciousness. As long as humans have fears, the lost gods will always be there, waiting, a subtle, psychological undercurrent to the grand epic stories of the Olympians. The bizarre detail of this lingering presence is that the catacombs, once a place of profound silence and terror, now hum with a soft, gentle energy. The petrified memories in the first chamber are no longer crumbling into dust. They are slowly, meticulously piecing themselves back together. The husks in the library of the unmade are no longer empty. They have a faint, warm glow, as if a small spark of memory has been returned to them. The lost gods are still there in the quiet corners of the mind and in the forgotten places of the world, but they are no longer in control. Lyra looks at you, her face a mask of solemn relief. The golden scroll of uncreation is now a glowing golden scroll of recreation. Its purpose has been inverted. It no longer contains a list of those who will be forgotten, but of those who will be remembered. She explains a chilling, little-known historical anecdote from the last days of the Roman Empire, a rumor of a secret cult of librarians who, in the face of the empire's collapse, began a great lost project to meticulously remember every person who was ever erased from the public record. Their goal was not to rebuild the empire, but to restore the collective human psyche. This is the truth of the lost gods. The only way to defeat them is not with war, but with an act of profound, unwavering remembrance. The psychological aftermath of this journey is that you are no longer a spectator. You are a part of the story. The truth of the lost gods is now a part of your own mind. A truth that will forever make you a silent keeper of a secret so vast it could unravel the world. But the question that remained was, what would be the final, lasting legacy of a pantheon that was so terrifying it had to be forgotten? And would the memory of their terrible existence, now a part of your mind, be a gift or a curse? As you take a final, deep breath, you know that the journey into the lost pantheon is over. But the psychological war is just beginning. The echoes of the catacombs fade, and you and Lyra emerge from the darkness into the cool, pre-dawn air of the Roman Forum. The city of stone sleeps, its dreams no longer dust, but a collective hum of remembered life. This is the legacy of silence, the final truth of this epic journey. The Roman Empire, a crucial historical fact, was a testament not to its gods, but to its own people, who, in their profound psychological ingenuity, created a world of light to keep the shadows at bay. The bizarre detail of this final legacy is that the gods of Olympus, the ones you know and love, are now subtly changed. Jupiter's thunder is a little less fierce. Venus's beauty is a little less perfect. They have been humbled by their brush with oblivion, and they have been made more human, more accessible. They have learned that their power is not inherent, but is a function of the mortal will, and that their existence is not an eternal truth but a choice. Lyra, her face serene, holds the golden scroll of recreation. Its blank surface is now a shimmering, living thing, waiting for the names of those who will be remembered. She explains a final, poignant historical fact. The Roman cult of the family was not just a social structure, it was a religious practice, a ritualistic act of remembering the ancestors. The most important gods in the Roman Pantheon were not the ones on Mount Olympus, but the ones in the home, the Lares and the Pinides, the gods of the family and the hearth. They were the gods of personal, private memory, the ones who could not be erased, the ones who could not be forgotten. The lost gods are still there, in the quiet corners of your mind, a silent psychological presence. They are the voice of doubt, the shadow of regret, the sorrow of a lost opportunity. But they are no longer a threat. They are a part of you. They are the terrifying, beautiful truth that your existence is not a given, but a fragile, temporal thing, a thing that can be unmade at any moment. And the only way to fight them is with an act of profound, unending remembrance. Slow the pacing, soften vocabulary, lengthen sentences. And so, as the sun begins to rise over the ancient city, you stand on the Palatine Hill, the very heart of the Roman world, and you feel a profound, quiet peace. The epic journey is over, the myths and legends have been unraveled, and the untold truths behind the deities have been revealed. The gods of Rome, the ones of light and the ones of darkness, are not forces of fate, but of choice. Their power is not in their might, but in your own fragile, beautiful mind. The silence you feel now is not the silence of oblivion, but the quiet hum of a world that is not forgotten, a world that is remembered. And so, as the sun casts its golden light upon the eternal city, you are left with a single, final whisper. The memory of this tale that you must never, ever let go.